It's 6 a.m., July 30th, 2017, and I'm laying face down in a dirt parking lot in rural England. I've been awake for 26 hours, running constantly for 24, and I've covered 102.8 miles, 40 more than I've ever run before, but I'm in a dark place. I'd spent the night gingerly walking through shadowy trails, slick with mud, too slippery to run. Several times, even catching myself falling asleep on my feet. So when I arrived in this parking lot, stumbling in shortly after sunrise, I collapsed. Surrounding me was my crew, my sister, and two of my best friends, who had agreed to meet me along the trail every couple of hours to refill my supplies in this race, the Kennet Avon Canal Race, which at 145 miles non-stop is the UK's longest ultramarathon. As I lay on the ground, the thought of running another 42 miles, more than 1.5 marathons, filled me with dread and fear, and most of all, shame. What made me think I could do this? I wanted to cry, but I was too tired. So I just closed my eyes and for a few minutes lay still. Before telling you how the race finished, I'd like to take a step back and share with you how I found myself there. I got into endurance racing 10 years ago while experiencing depression. And the connection between exercise and mental health is robust and well documented. So as you might expect, it helped me feel better. But what surprised me and has captivated me ever since was realizing that endurance sports is training for life. Now, I'm not referring to the practice of setting and achieving goals, or feeling yourself grow and develop new abilities. Those facets of training are beautiful and create immediate benefits, but I'm talking about something more subtle and cross-cutting. You see, what I realized is, as I approach the edge of my abilities, I experience pain. And now some pain is like an alarm, warning us of danger. When you begin to train, you feel that pain often. Your body needs time to adjust. But there's another type of pain. A pain that sings the siren song of rest. Not because you truly need it, but because rest is comfortable, and our brains evolved to protect us from overexerting. That pain, that's the pain that caught my attention. I remember in my very first marathon, as I entered the final mile, I was so tired, I thought, that's it. I can't run any farther, I'll just walk the rest of the way. And just as I begin to slow down, I hear from behind me another runner yell, "Run!" He sounded genuinely angry at me, so I took off with a willpower I didn't know I still had. And I sprinted to the finish. Now, I never met that guy, but he played a huge role in my life, because in that moment, he taught me that I can lean into my pain. And this fascinates me, because pain is a constant part of life. You can run from it, but you can't escape it. But as I found through that moment and countless moments afterwards, pain does not have to cause suffering. To suffer is a habit. It's a choice. And it's something you can overcome. Stephen Covey, famous researcher, author, he talked about this too. In his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he called this the power to choose, to separate stimulus from response. He said it's what makes us human, and it helps in all areas of life. So it was this very insight that helped me to recover in 2008, and which spurs me on today. In fact, that 145-mile ultra was actually an attempt to prepare for something much more difficult. Beginning December of 2019, I'm competing in a race called the Atlantic Challenge. It's a rowing race, 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean, beginning in the Canary Islands and finishing in Antigua in the Caribbean. I'll spend up to 3 months at sea, entirely self-sufficient and utterly alone. Just me, my boat, and my oars. Ocean rowing is a growing sport, but even today, more people have been to outer space than have rowed solo across any ocean. Now, people often ask me, they say, Terence, how's the training going? And I get the sense folks envision preparing for an ocean row as endless physical training. But that's only partly true. Because beyond some technical skills and good fitness, endurance racing, and ocean rowing included, is largely mental. And in the extreme case of being alone in the middle of the ocean, I expect that's even more true. Now, most people don't want to row across an ocean or run an ultramarathon, and that's fine. Because here's the thing, whether you're drawn to physical feats or you challenge yourself in other ways, learning to separate stimulus from response will help you achieve your goals. So today, I'd like to share with you 3 techniques to help you do just that. They're techniques I'm using to prepare for the United Worlds Challenge, my Atlantic row. But the truth is, you can apply these to anything. Now, I mentioned that race. It was called the Kennet Avon Canal Race. Canal, because the route follows canals from Bristol on one side of the country all the way to London on the other side of the country before finishing beneath Paddington Station. Now, to help myself believe that I could actually complete this event despite being more than 2 times farther than anything I'd previously run, I set out to create a clear mental vision of me completing this event. So this is technique 1. Create a clear vision. Now, as luck would have it, I was actually living in London on a canal boat at the time. So I made a bold move. I took the boat and I drove it down the canal and parked it directly outside Paddington Station, beside where the finish line would be. Now, I didn't just do this to shorten my trip home post-race. I did it so I could merge the vision of finishing with the vision of home. I knew I had to show up at the finish line no matter what, so I may as well run there. But I did something else that was really much more helpful. Before leaving London to go to Bristol for the start, I sat and I stared at the finish line where it would be. I stared at my boat. I imagined the banner overhead, imagined running underneath it, imagined the surge of emotions of completing this scary event. And I only stood up when I'd soaked up every detail of this imagined experience so that I could call on it during the race. And when I would cross the finish line, it would be like pressing play on a vision that was recorded in my head. I'd like you to ask yourself, what is your vision? What reality are you creating in your mind? Picture your goal. Fill in the details until it's crystal clear, and then, and this is crucial, envision the fruition of that goal. Experience its completion, and then store that embodied experience inside you. I practice this regularly. I envision myself out in the ocean in my rowboat, just 23 feet long, looking up at waves the size of a whole house. It's actually a frightening vision, to be honest, and that brings us to technique 2. Technique 2 I call remember to reorient. By reorient, I mean to recognize a certain thought pattern and then intentionally interrupt it with the intention of reorienting your focus. You can do this with mantras. During the Kennet Avon Canal Race, mantras were critical. I was in the best shape of my life. I had already run 13 marathons that year. But in a race that's 5.5 marathons long, I knew I couldn't rely on fitness alone. Inevitably, I would have to walk. But when my body slows down, my mind speeds up. And so as I walked, I found I was judging myself, disappointed by my own need to slow down. And that kind of negative self-talk, it can spiral out of control. But I had a response. I reminded myself, this is what I came for. This is what I came for. The walking, the challenge, the difficulty, the doubts. This is what I came for. I find this mantra is also useful in daily life, such as when I face a challenge at work. I remind myself, this is what I came for. The challenge makes me grow. And isn't that what attracted me in the first place? Looking ahead to the row, mantras are even more important. So much so that I've written several already, each with its own intention and area of impact. I take a few minutes to repeat them to myself each morning, so I become familiar with them and can call on them in times of need. I've been told by a previous solo ocean rower that out on the high seas, as you battle towering waves and your own inner demons, you have to shout the mantras at the top of your lungs to hold any power. For the final technique, let's go back to that parking lot. Checkpoint 7, mile 102.8. I'm lying face down, shivering in the cold as my crew boils water for tea. They sit me up, give me some soup, but I can't even keep it down. My body is telling me to quit. And I might have agreed if it were not for my crew. But we are stronger than our bodies, and we are more than our minds. Over the next 30 minutes, they get me to sit up. They get some food inside me. They change my shoes and socks and ever so gently usher me back onto the course. They take turns walking and jogging beside me. It's hard to describe the pain I felt. With each step, my legs trembled in agony. My swollen feet cried for rest. We made slow but constant progress, and the miles ticked along. 110, 120, 130. Each time I began to run, tears would well in my eyes. But listening closely, I also noticed I felt a sense of relief for my crew. Relief for these people who were working so tirelessly for me. Relief for these people who I knew wanted nothing more than to see me succeed. And so listening to that relief, I realized the best way to honor their gifts was to step beyond the pain. And so with a half marathon to go, I said, that's it. No more walking. That's it. And picked up the pace. With a faster pace, began moving up the field, passing several runners, surprising myself and my crew, making the last 10 miles the fastest in the whole race. I could finally see again in my mind's eye the vision had returned, the boat, the finish line, the banner overhead. With rain pouring down, I rounded a bend, and then there it was before me. I accelerated into it, and finally, at 5 p.m. on the second day, 35 hours after I began, I crossed the finish line, placing 14th of 78 starters and 38 finishers. This is a photo from the finish line. And this is a photo of me in my bed just a few minutes later. I thought I wouldn't get out of it for the rest of the year. Now, those last 10 miles, I didn't run them with my legs. I ran them with my heart, which is the third and most important technique that I can share with you. Run with your heart. I had signed up for this race asking, what can I get from this experience? I wanted to know, can I trust myself to do something I have no evidence to suggest I can do? But I realized to finish the event, I had to change the question, going from I to we, asking not what can I get, but what can I give to this experience? What can I give to those who have given me so much? Running with my heart meant empathizing with my crew, but it can also mean dedicating yourself to a person, a group of people, or a cause. Which is why for the United Worlds Challenge, my solo Atlantic row, I'm raising scholarships to the United Worlds colleges, paying forward a life-changing scholarship I received at age 17. Because I know, next to endurance racing, it's thanks to the United Worlds colleges that I'm here with you today. That scholarship introduced me to the world, kickstarted my education, and eventually led me to Deloitte. So it's deeply motivating to create the same opportunities now for someone else. So this is the most powerful technique I can share. If you run with your heart, and your heart is connected to others, you can run so much farther by running with the hearts of more. Now, I'm not the first person to use these techniques or apply them to endurance sports. I don't pretend to own them or be their inventor, and I certainly don't apply them perfectly or all the time. I still suffer. But it's about shortening that instance of suffering to a moment, interrupting it, and regaining control. We all experience pain and setbacks, but as I learned through endurance sports, it's how we respond to those setbacks that matters. Do we let the pain cause us suffering? Or do we apply mental techniques and find a way to lean in and proceed stronger than ever? Now before I go, there's one last thing I would like to share. An invitation. I invite you to ask yourself, what is something you've always wanted to try, but couldn't muster the courage? What is something you would dedicate yourself to, even if no one knew, and you never received any applause. Follow that idea, and eventually it will take you to your ocean. 10 years ago, I had no idea mine would be literal, but by listening to the voice inside me that asked, what are my limits? What happens if I separate pain from response? I found myself taking on larger and larger challenges, equipped with little more than an evolution in my approach. So listen to the voice inside you. Create a clear vision of success. Remember to reorient when you struggle, and then run with your heart. And you will find yourself crossing oceans of your own. Thank you.